everyone. Welcome. I am Laura Rogers, and this is SharePoint Power Hour. SharePoint Power Hour is our weekly show that we do every Wednesday at 11 Central, and we have, just demos that we do, all out-of-the-box stuff that you can do with SharePoint and Office 365. We don't go into programming. We don't go into server admin, really. We just stick to just a ton of other topics of things that we figured out or things we thought we would demonstrate. And we've been doing this for a couple of years now. Again, I'm Laura Rogers. I'm a Microsoft MVP. Oh, it just got renewed last week. Yay. And let's see, we'll get everybody to introduce themselves. We used to be the SharePoint consulting team at Rackspace Hosting, which no longer exists. So we are now still doing SharePoint Power Hour. And we are no longer coworkers anymore, but we're all here together virtually. So let's see, I'll let you two introduce each other, but then I'm going to talk a little bit more about Slack after you do that.
Okay.
Corey?
So should I introduce Joelle, or?
Oh, no, that's not one.
This is Joelle. So I'm Corey Emmons, as you can see from my lower third, and that's my Twitter handle. Like Laura said, I still kind of work for Rackspace. They still pay me, so that's cool. Though I don't really do much work anymore. I'm doing some, independent consulting and kind of looking around for new things to try out. So, if any of you are bored and want to pay me lots of money, I'm your guy. Yeah, I guess that's about it for me.
All right, hey guys, I am Joelle Farley. I also formerly of Rackspace, and I am a consultant at CoDesigned, a company here in Atlanta, and I'll be the one doing a presentation today on query rules, which are a feature of Search. So once Laura talks about Slack, we'll jump into that.
All right, cool. So I have, let me see, I can put Slack channel up on the screen, and got this cool little software that lets me, look at that. Let's see that. So Slack is, so I created, you'll notice in the description, so if you are watching us on YouTube, or if you're watching us on the Google Hangout, you'll notice in the little description for Power Hour, there's a link to join the Slack. Basically, it's a form to fill out that comes to me to be able to join our Slack channel. And once you're in there, next time every week when we have Power Hour, we just go to, it's like IW Mentor, which is the name of my new training company, .slack.com. And it's also an app. So having the Slack app makes it really easy to just be able to have, have discussions and chats pop up, have team collaboration and things like that. But so our channel is, our IW Mentor channel has, you'll notice a little hashtag Power Hour on the left side. You see that on the screen there. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this for our Q&A instead of the old Google Hangout Q&A. And this is going to be something where we can just have more interactive discussions going on, discussions during Power Hour. You can even do little sort of what's called little reactions on there. Can y'all do a little reaction on my welcome? Anybody who happens to be in there? So if you joined last week, then you're already in there. All you have to do is open up the site or open up the app and join. You can see that somebody put a little smiley face and somebody did a little sunglasses. And hey, thanks. All right, cool. So you can do the little reaction on other things that other people have said, or you can do just, like he did, kind of on its own. So what I want you to try to do, though, is try to do the reaction on the thing that you're reacting to. So you do the little, you use your little icon and you hover over what that person has just said and do the reaction on that. Does that make sense? So that's kind of what they are encouraging you to do in Slack, the way it works. And then you can do a little slash. I'll do slash Giphy. That's my favorite one, Power Hour, and just it will pull up at random. Yeah. So it's a power tool. So it'll pull up a random GIF off the internet. So those are just kind of fun, silly things. So you can do a lot more. You can do a lot more in Slack than you could with the Q&A. So y'all have fun with it. Awesome. Awesomeness. Cool. Thanks, Corey. Y'all have fun with that. I'll go ahead and hide that and get it out of the way, and then we'll go ahead and let Joelle's presentation today is on query rules in SharePoint Search, which I have always been fascinated with, but never really had much time to delve into, and I just never did. So I'm excited. I think I'm going to learn a lot in this. I'll probably have a lot of questions. So we'll turn it over to Joelle.
Alrighty, so let me go ahead and get my screen share going here. So just bear with me, un momento. And I'm working off one screen, so I'm going to have to switch between here. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get away from this crazy looking screen. Alrighty. You guys should be seeing a presentation. Let me know if you're not. Looks like, are we seeing it?
Yes, we see it.
Cool, thanks. All right, so I wanted to just take a little bit of time today to talk about query rules in SharePoint 2013. They're also in SharePoint 2016 and SharePoint Online as well. And I'm going to be using, just so you guys know ahead of time, I always like to kind of preface what I'm going to be using for my demos. I'm actually going to be using an Office 365 environment with a SharePoint Online site. And so we'll be going through that. And there is specifically one little difference, so I will point that out as we get there. So what are query rules? Essentially, query rules are ways that we can trick when somebody kind of goes in to search for a certain word or phrase. We can have SharePoint basically take that word or phrase and then turn it into a certain result. So what that means is if I'm searching for a specific word like, audio, what I can do is in the query rule, I can actually set up so that anything that has a content type of audio or it has a certain column that has that as metadata, I can take that information and basically put it in a block and show it above the rest of my results. There's other things as well. We're going to talk about like a promoted link, and then also kind of rerouting queries or changing queries once somebody searches for something. So we'll kind of go through all of the different pieces of query rules. Just one thing before we do that is that these used to be called best bets in SharePoint 2010. I didn't see a ton of people using them then because they were a little clunky, but they are much improved, a lot easier to use, and there's also a lot more you can do with query rules than what you could do with best bets. But just in case you're looking for something similar to best bets when you move to 2013 or 2016, this is going to be where you're going to get that. So let's go ahead and take a look, because there's going to be 3 different parts to this demo and discussion. So there's 3 different parts of a query rule when you go in to set up a query rule. You have a promoted result, which basically, if you think of it, it's a lot like when you go to Google and you search something and there's somebody that has paid to actually have their result be on top via the first link on the very top. It's kind of the same idea as that, only we can actually just set up things in our intranets or extranets so that if somebody searches for a certain word or phrase, we might be able to point them directly to a certain subsite or even something external to SharePoint, maybe not even in the SharePoint, but maybe another one of our web pages or just something on the web in general. We also have result block. That's kind of like the first example I used, where we are basically, if you're searching for something, it's going to look for a certain criteria. Like, let's say if I wanted to pull back anything with a specific content type or a specific metadata column or maybe a specific file type, I can have those results display at the kind of in a block at the top of my search page. So that's kind of the second thing. And then the third thing is routing the query. And we'll get in and take a look at that. And this is kind of like tricking the user in a way because they might search for something, but then we're going to tell in the rule, we're going to say, well, if they search for this, change the query to pull back these results. So then the example I'm going to use in a little while, you can essentially, say if they're searching for a case study, go ahead and only return results where the file type is PDF. And that way, no matter where the word case study is, it could be in many different documents, it could be on different pages, but we're only going to show them things that are actual PDF documents. So you can really get in and do a lot with that. There's a lot of power there. All right, so I want to kind of start off with the first example, talk about promoted result a little bit, and then actually go in and walk through the steps of creating a query rule so you can see where that's done at. So the promoted result, as I mentioned, the promoted result is the idea of being able to kind of place a link to something above the rest of the results. And with the promoted result, I have a specific example that I wanted to use that is an actual real-world example, so something that I've done before. So the idea here is when a user searches for the word project, or the word project is in their search, they should see a link to the project portal above all other results. So let's say if they're at the top level of the intranet and the project portals, maybe it could possibly be over in our collab environment, our collab site collection. So when I search for the word project on my search page, I always see the project portal as the very top result, and it's a link at the very top, and I can click on that and easily get to the project portal. So that way, no matter where a word as common as project is used, we know that that's usually when our users are going in and looking for the projects, they're looking for that portal. So it kind of just helps guide them a little bit better. So without further ado, let me go ahead and pull up a site. So I have the project portal here. So this is just a site collection that I use for testing. It's in Office 365. So I have my project portal. As I can see, that's a subsite of my current site. So it's empowered/project. It does not have to be that. It could be in a completely other site collection. It could even be external, like I said, external to SharePoint. And the way I create this is I'm going to go to, and I'm actually going to do this at the top level. So I'm going to go to Site Settings. And so then once under Site Settings, I'm going to go under Site Collection Administration and then Search Query Rules. And I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And then here I have my Manage Query Rules page. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to select what result source you want to create a query rule on. Now, most of the time, if you're just setting up a query rule for your general search, so like your enterprise search, you can actually scroll down, click on this list, and go to your local SharePoint results. If you are creating something specifically for videos or pictures, so that it would only apply if one of those result sources was being used, you can actually do that as well. And I think maybe a future session, we should probably do one on result sources, but you can also create custom result sources for different content search web parts or different search web parts across your site. And when you do that, you can actually set specific query rules on those as well. So you really can get pretty detailed on the level of a query rule. So just for this, I'm going to go ahead and do it at the highest level, which is this local SharePoint results, which is basically just my regular SharePoint search. So when I click on that, give it a second, I have the query rules here. So SharePoint's going to provide us with some already, so we can see conversations and wiki and blog and zip, Visio, Adobe PDF. A lot of these things will provide result blocks and just kind of do some ranking and stuff like that automatically. And those, like I said, those are just things that are built into SharePoint. You never want to change these. That would probably be just like what we used to say when we would work with custom forms in SharePoint Designer. You never want to actually change the default. You can actually, however, copy it though. You can copy it and then make changes to that, and then even make this one inactive if you needed to. So what I've already done is I've actually already created a promoted link query rule. And I wanted to have that created so I could kind of walk through it. But when you want to create a new one, you can just click New Query Rule. And from here, I'm actually just going to edit the one I already have. And the page is going to look exactly the same as if I would have clicked New. So here I can give my rule a name. So I just called it, I'm real creative, just called it project. And then here are the query conditions. So this is what the user types in that's going to make this query happen. So there's a couple options here. The three that I use the most, I actually have never used anything but these three. We have query, excuse me, I will probably cough during this, so apologies. Query matches keyword exactly, so that means that whatever word I type in or phrase I type in, they would have to type that in exactly for this query rule to fire. Or query contains an action term, so that means that if I'm doing like project, you know, they may not just search for the word project, they could search for, new customer project, or, many different things. So the action term allows me to just say, if they search at all, it's kind of like using contains instead of equals. So here, project, and then I can, add additional things here like customer, etc. And as you can see right in the directions, it tells you to that you can separate multiple words and phrases by a semicolon. So that's action term. And then finally, query matches dictionary. So dictionary, it's kind of a confusing word for those that are more novice power users. But essentially, the dictionary, what it refers to here is you can actually point this query to look at an entire term set. So in managed metadata in your term store, let's say you have a term set of all of your different customers. So then you want to create excuse me. You want to create a query rule that looks and says if they ever search for any of the words in this dictionary or this term set, then I want to return a certain results. And that way you don't have to sit here and list them all out, and especially if there was like 100 of them. You don't want to sit here and list them all out. You can actually just point it directly to a term set and then have that do the work for you. Because you've already taken the time to create your term set, why not use it? So that's what it means when it says dictionary. You can actually do the action term on the dictionary as well. So just like you can do matches exactly, you can actually use the term set as action terms as well in your query condition. Sorry. There was also query more common in source, result type commonly used, advanced query text match. I have not, personally, honestly, I have never used these in the work that I've done, but there is documentation on query rules out there that talk a little bit about what those three do. And you can probably just, looking at the descriptions, you can probably kind of get an idea of what you would be able to do with those. But the most popular ones are definitely the first three. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to do exactly because of my demo here. So then I put in a couple of words, project, project management, projects. As you notice, I can remove this condition, or I can add an alternate condition. So if I need, an and or a situation, I can do that as well. And then here are my three options that I mentioned. So I have promoted results, I have result blocks, and then change ranked results by changing the query. That's kind of rerouting the query that I mentioned. So the promoted results I've already created, but if I want to create a new one, I just click Add Promoted. We're going to go ahead and just edit the one that's already here so you can see it. So here it's a really simple form. So it's just the title, the URL that I'm pointing them to, and then a description. We also have this option here called Render the URL as a banner instead of as a hyperlink. What this does is it actually kind of looks like a truncated page view or web part. That's the way I would describe it. It basically puts like this small box at the top of your results that has like a preview of the site. And that might be different depending on what you're pointing at, but when I pointed just to another SharePoint site, that's what it does. But that might not be what you really want, so I typically leave that unchecked. And of course, I'm sure that with your search page, you could probably style something like this as well if you were doing that kind of styling. But just out of the box, it's going to be a link, and it's going to have a check mark beside it, and that's kind of how you'll know that it's a promoted link or promoted result. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and I filled that out, put the URL in, put a description in, and click Save. So once I have that added in, it's just kind of reloading for me. I'm going to go ahead and click Save here. We'll talk about publishing at the end. Go ahead and click Save, and let's go ahead and take a look at what this actually would look like for a user. And I'll let that save. Of course, I'm doing a demo, so everything's going to be super slow, right? Just kind of browse over since that rule was already there. Oh, there it goes. Let's see. So I'm going to search project. And what we'll see is the promoted link, or I keep calling it a promoted link. It's a similar to a promoted link, but it's a promoted result.
That is very cool. I love that.
Yeah, so right here at the top, it looks a lot like, like I said, it will probably remind you a little bit of Google, or Bing, sorry if Microsoft's listening. But right here, I can see there's the checkbox, there's visit the project portal, and I see my description, and I can go ahead and click on that and head right over to the project portal. And anytime anybody uses those words or phrases that I put in there, that result will pop up. But if I just search for something random, we'll see that it doesn't show up. Well, project portal is a popular item, so it's probably ranked high, but you can see that it's not the actual link because it doesn't have that check mark beside it. All right. Any questions so far about any of that stuff before I move on to the next piece?
I don't see any questions in there. Everybody's like, ever since we got Slack, everybody's very quiet, or at least today they are.
I think they're just so blown away.
They're just so blown away by the amazingly improved interface.
Yes, it's so wonderful. Ooh, it's only been out for 3 years.
Well, it could be out forever. Nobody knows how to use it. It doesn't matter.
That's for sure. That's for sure. I'm still learning stuff daily, so I know that's the truth. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. Let's go back over here. So that was that example was user searches for the word project. They should see a link to the project portal above all other results, and that's what we just did. So next, we're going to look at result block. So the idea here is that we actually want to have a block, and by block, it's essentially just a couple results with a slight border around them. And we want that block to meet a certain criteria and then show above all the other results. And so we're going to go in, and the example that I'm actually going to use for this specific one is that when a user searches, and I'm actually going to do this at a different level so that I can show you that if you needed to, you could set query rules at a sub-site level instead of at your enterprise or top level. So we'll see that as well. So when a user searches for an RFP, a block of results should show above all the others. This block could specifically show documents that had the RFP content type. So the idea here is that we have a document content type that's been created called RFP that we use for all our RFPs. And we want to make sure that when I type in the word RFP, that it doesn't just pull back any time that's where it's been used on a page or in some other document somewhere else, because that could make our results a little hard to look through. We want to have it so that anything that's an actual RFP content type shows above all the other results. So that's the idea here, and that's what we're going to go in and do. So just bear with me 1 second. I'll switch over. So I'm going to go down to my project portal level. So like I said, I'm actually going to do this one a little bit differently. I'm going to do it at the sub-site level. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to show you guys. So I have sales documents in my sales document library. Oh, Laura, we should talk about this a little bit later. So then in my sales document library, we have, let's see, SOW and RFP. So those are two content types that I have. And I have some documents that are set to that content type. So now I'm going to go to my query rules, site settings, and I am going to go to query rules under search. And load the same result source I used earlier, even though this one will only apply to the sub-site level. And I'm going to do a new query rule. I saw that comment. I don't know about that UI. We should have a lively discussion about that in a little bit. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do RFP block, and this is going to tell on me that I may have already tested this. And then query matches exactly. Of course, I could do contains action term, which I could do that. Customer, you can pretty much type anything that you think, any action term you think would apply to this. Just for the sake of the demo, though, I'm just going to do RFP, keep it simple. And now, for the part we haven't seen, I'll let that think for a second. Finish what it's doing. I'm going to add a result block. So we did the promoted result, now we're going to do a result block. This one's a little bit more complicated when you're configuring it, so that's why I wanted to make sure to kind of click through and talk through this one. So it's basically telling you that you have variables here that you can use in your query. You can do the search box query, that's the original query from the search box, or subject terms to match keyword phrase, e.g. RFP. And what it's telling you that for is your block, you can give that a title. So I could say here that RFPs related, or let's do this, related RFPs for blah, blah, blah. Now the subject term here is going to be whatever the system deemed that matched our keyword query here. So that if I was doing an action term, it would be the word RFP, because they might have searched for, ABC customer RFP, then, the RFP would be the word that matched the condition. And that would be what would turn into the subject terms here. But I could also just do the entire query. I could change this to whatever they typed. It would say related RFPs for customer ABC RFP. So you can actually set that up so that that block has a very specific title that tells them what they're looking for, what they're looking at. So that's just kind of a little bit about that. So now the important part is the query. So what I want to do here is I'm going to go ahead and launch the query builder, and this is very, very familiar if you have done content search web parts, which that's kind of everybody with SharePoint 2013, that's kind of where everybody has jumped in at, is these content search web parts, because they're so useful. The query builder that you're used to there is very similar to what you would see with the query rules as well. So here I'm going to leave subject terms, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in content type as my property filter, and I just leave it as contains, and then I'm going to go dig in for RFP. Let's see, I'm blind. Where it is? There it is. And then I'm going to add them and test it, make sure I get back some results. There's some lovely results there. And that's essentially it for this specific one. Now, of course, you could get a whole lot more complicated with this. You could go on, content type, a specific column value, a specific mapped property or crawled property. You could really, really get specific on what you want to return in that result block, because this is a query builder, so it has that same ability that you saw with the content search web part. So then once I go ahead and I hit test query, I see that I'm getting some results. They look like good results to me. I can go ahead and click OK. Then I also have settings here. So, and routing, so I'll kind of go expand those. So the first thing is I can set right here, search the source, query's original source, which is the local SharePoint results. I'm just going to leave that there. Items. So here what I can say is I can say how many items do I want displayed in that block. And we can see here that it gives me up to 10. So I can't do more than 10, but I can do up to 10. So I'm going to do like 4. That looks good. And I can, like I said, you can change that. And then, of course, if it basically asks you here if you want to show a more link. So that way, let's say if there's 100 results and you're only showing the first 5, do you want to give users the ability to click on more and then go see the rest of what those results would have been? And if you do, you can go ahead and do more link goes to the following URL. You can point them maybe to the library that those documents are stored in, or maybe create a specific search page just for these documents. So there's a lot you could do there as well. The other big one here is the block is always shown above core results. So the idea here is that we want it to have a block and to be above all the other results. That's the option that I'm going to do for this one. Or we just want to rank it within the core results. So what that means is that anything that matches this condition or this query gets ranked higher, but that it's just going to appear like a regular result. So it's not going to actually be in a block on top. It's just going to be inside and within the regular results that we're used to seeing. But it will be ranked higher. And then just like a content search web part, we have display templates for this block. So you can actually come in here and customize that as well. Of course, you would need to be able to, you would need to have an understanding of some HTML, CSS stuff and be able to modify those and upload those. But that is an option. And I think we actually have a power hour or two on display templates, so check that out. And then the routing, I have not used this yet, so it says label for routing to a content search web part. I think the idea here is that it's similar to kind of the more link, so being able to, if they want to get additional, want to see the full results of this query, that they'd be able to get routed to like a content search web part or another page. I think that's kind of the idea there. I have not honestly messed with that too much though. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And then once it finishes, I'm going to click Save, and then we'll go test it out. And we're waiting, and we're waiting. Okay, and I'm going to go back to Project Portal. Oh, wait, I did want to explain that. Hold on. I just saw it and forgot to mention it. Okay, so I did mention earlier that there is one difference that I noticed for Office 365. So if you guys watched a couple of weeks ago, Laura and I did a discussion on external users in Office 365. And one of the things that I mentioned was that there are certain search things that may not work for external users or may not apply to them. And one of those things is query rules. So you'll see here that underneath my RFP block, because I'm doing an actual query change, it's telling me enterprise users only. Now, if I was on premise, I would not see this message. But because I'm in Office 365 and also because I have external users turned on, I'm seeing that. And what that tells me is that if my external user was to go in and search for an RFP, they would not see the block like my actual, authenticated, licensed users would see. So just something to kind of note there for your external, if you are setting up an extranet or something like that. All right, so now let's go back over here. And I'm going to go ahead and search RFP. And now there's that lovely thing, and as you can see, it's a little redundant, related RFPs for RFP. But as you can see, this is that result block there. So I can see the block around my results, and I can see that it's showing me 3 items that it returned. And of course, that's above everything else. So you can, like I said, you can customize the title here. You can customize whether or not there's a more link, so you have a couple of options there. So just a kind of another neat part of query rules. All right, let's talk about the final one. And go back up to my top level to do that. So finally, we have basically where we can change the query based on a certain value. So this is not a result. It's similar to a result block because we're actually going to have a query builder, but it's not going to do anything with a block. It's basically just going to change their query based on a certain criteria. So that's routing the query. In the example here, we're basically going to do, when a user searches for the action word product, the query will only return items with a content type of product. This will filter out some of the pages and documents where the action word is used but isn't an actual item in the product list. And so the idea here is where you can kind of trick your users. So earlier I mentioned that another example where you have a case study, and you know that when somebody searches for a case study, you want to return only things that are PDF, because you know your case studies are always PDF. So what you can do is you can actually, in the changing the query feature, you can actually say file type contains or equals PDF, and then that way whenever they search for the word case study, then it only gives them PDFs, so it wouldn't show them any other type of results. So the difference between this and the result block, and I actually noticed that my word at the top is wrong, so apologies for that. But the difference between this and the result block is that this is actually going to just completely change the results that they see, whereas the result block just kind of ranks things and puts things a little bit higher. So that's kind of the difference there. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Let me switch over. And I am going to go to Site Settings, Site Collection Administration, Search Query Rules again. And Local SharePoint Results. And New Query Rule. And we're waiting. There it is. All right, and then I'm going to call this the old product switcheroo. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and match the keywords exactly. Like I said, I'm just kind of being lazy here. But the idea is if I could do query contains action term, and then if they ever use the word product. You know, I've talked about that a few times. But I'm just going to be lazy. All right, so query matches, when they search for product, I want them to automatically only see things that are of the product content type. So I can go ahead and do change ranked results by changing the query.
We have a question, Joelle.
Yep.
SP Sherm. I call everybody by their Twitter name. Are query rules scoped to the farm tenant? Can we scope to site collections or even site level, or in the case of site level, are we better off using content by search web part?
No, yeah, you can scope it at all of the levels essentially. You can scope it at the enterprise level. So if you have your local SharePoint results and you want to set that at the enterprise level, so that whenever we're using an enterprise search center, that it's always that query rule is what's used. You can do that. You can do it at the site collection level, and you can even do it at the sub-site level, which is what I just did with the RFPs. It just depends on what you need. And of course, there's a mixture of things that can be done. It can be that maybe your query rules, you actually just always build at one level, but then you have different result sources that you put your query rules on. And those result sources are what is pulling back information from specific sites or specific, content locations. So it really just depends on what you need. But yeah, you can do it at different levels. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and set this last one up. And we are just going to basically reroute them so that anytime they search for product, they only see things that are of the product content type. So I just add that in there. The content type contains product. Test query, so I can see that these are all the same. They're just all generic products. And go ahead and click OK. And then the final thing I want to mention, since this is the last part of the query rule, is that under publishing here, this is where you can say is active. So you can actually turn something off if you no longer you want to keep the rule because you've done a lot of work in configuring it. Excuse me, but you don't want it to be active any longer. You can also do a start date, an end date, a review date, and then contact. So we've started doing some testing on review date and contact just to see if it, fires an email off or something like that. I don't know for sure, so I have to do a little bit more around that. And if there's anybody out there who's actually tested either of those fields, let me know because I'd like to have an idea. But yeah, so you can set it on a specific start date and a specific end date. So maybe if, you know, let's say that it's open enrollment time and we wanted there to be this promoted link. So if somebody searches for the word benefits, you know, there's a promoted link that takes them to the article or the new, you know, the document for the new benefits package for 2016 or 2017. We can actually say, you know, set that up and have it in there and have it end at a certain time, so then that way, you know, it only lasts during open enrollment or whatever, and then it goes away after that. So just some ideas around, you know, things that you might want to only do for a temporary bit of time. And the whole idea here is just making sure that you're kind of getting search to be, you know, the first place people go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit save on this so we can see how this looks. So yeah, and I'm going to go back to my home page. And now I'm going to do a search for product. And now I can see that the only things that are being returned are actual products. Looks kind of nice and neat there, doesn't it? And of course, I could always change the display templates and all that stuff and kind of make this really fancy. But the whole idea here is just kind of on the simple side of things, understanding how our query rules work and what they do. So on a final note, I think that's it for my presentation. But on a final note, one of the things that I would suggest, a lot of people have asked me, you know, how do I know what query rules to create? You know, maybe if you're just a SharePoint person and you're not really sure what people are searching for. One of the things that I suggest and that's worked really, really well is that, you know, after somebody implements SharePoint 2013 and they roll it out and people start using it, it's a really good idea to either work with the governance team or the SharePoint project team to pull reports on the usage of search and kind of get an idea of what's going on with search. And you can do that out of the box. So if we go to Site Settings, and under Site Collection Administration, and was it Popularity and Search Reports? So we know that the usage reports, the actual like how many views and how many, you know, what users looked at what, those reports aren't the best in SharePoint 2013. However, the search reports are actually really, really good. So here we can see things like what are the top queries by day or month? What are the abandoned queries? So this is a really good one. So this is saying, what is something that somebody is searching for, but then they're never clicking on any result, which means that they're probably not seeing very good results with whatever that query is. So that way you can look at what that word or that phrase is and determine, well, maybe we need a query rule. Maybe we need, you know, if they're searching for RFP, but the only results that they really get hit with on that first page are just like, you know, web pages or other documents, maybe we need to do some work on the RFP query rule so that what gets returned to them is a little bit more efficient. Also, there's no result query, so let's say it's something where somebody searched for something and they just didn't see any results. So that's really important because if it's something they should see results for, it might be worth looking into. And then query rule usage, so you can actually see how often, if you do create a query rule, you want to see, well, is it actually worthwhile? You can actually see how often it gets fired. And then that way you have an idea of just how valuable that query rule was or is. So just a really important thing, whenever I'm helping people do governance for SharePoint 2013, this is the thing I tell them to always put on the agenda for their governance meetings, especially within a month or two of rolling out a new intranet, and then just keeping an eye on these reports every couple of months and making sure that you're making changes to search, because as content gets out there, it makes it a lot easier to know what we can do to customize and make the search experience better.
Also,
All
yeah,
right.
I've heard that you could easily have a full-time person, their entire job being search. There's so much you could do with search.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Anybody have any last questions? That was really useful. I'm actually going to have to go back and watch that again because I was messing with Slack and not listening as much as I really wanted to learn that stuff. So I'm going to go watch that again and like try the stuff myself and make it sink in. But yeah, let's see.
That's the
Corey,
nice
do you
thing
have
about these
any?
recorded videos.
Do what?
Yep.
The nice thing about these recorded videos is
Yeah, what
last
technology?
forever.
I'm having fun on my green screen, you can tell. So let's see, any other announcements? We've got what, Joelle? SharePoint Saturday Atlanta is June 11th, right?
Yep.
And we're both going to be at that, right?
Yep. I'll be there.
And there is actually in May, like May 10th through 12th, is the Collab 365. Are you gonna do that? I'm
not speaking at it, but I will probably attend it.
Oh, okay. I'll be speaking at that. That'll be a really good one. It's free. It's virtual, so it's collab365.events, I think, or it's easy to find online. And I also put it on my blog in my little upcoming speaking engagements page. What else? Oh, of course, Ignite is coming up in September.
Yep, right here in the ATL.
What?
I said right here in the ATL.
Yeah, yeah. So Joelle will just be right there. We can all just go crash at her house, right?
Yeah.
Woo!
Party! What other kind of SharePoint events are going on? Anybody have anything in the chat, in the little Slack chat?
Well, there is a big announcement. What is that? The 4th, I think?
Yeah, May 4th. There's going to be, you're right, I will be there, actually.
I know, it's like, Laura, come on.
Well, first I'm going to be speaking at the Digital Workplace Conference in Australia in a couple of weeks. So if anybody watching lives in Australia, I will be there. It's in Melbourne. And
So
it's the April 28th and 9th. And then right after that is the big May 4th announcement, the big SharePoint upcoming exciting stuff announcement. And so there's a Microsoft, there's a SharePoint blog about that, and there's a little registration thing to register to go watch the live online event. So that'll be really exciting. And I'll be live tweeting from the event. Yay.
Yay.
Yeah. Yeah, Twilson said, you need someone to carry your money? Yeah, sure. I need a personal assistant. All right, well, thanks everybody for joining us, and next week, I don't know, we'll figure something out.
we should talk about go through I saw your awesome blog, by the way, on the new look and feel for the document libraries. We should have a discussion on that next week. I have some opinions.
Yeah, that'll be interesting, because, I mean, yeah, well, we only got 10 minutes, but I think it's exciting for just general end users who need to be able to understand how to work in there and just be able to get around and not have to be trained in it. Everything's just more obvious as how to do things. You just click on a file and you move it, you copy it, you share it, whatever. All the buttons and things are much more obvious the way they've arranged it. But, of course, for people that have been using SharePoint for years, it's, oh, you know, change, it's freaking people out, and the branding people, it's freaking them out, and just people are all worried about the functionality and, you know, all the fancy things we do with lists and libraries, like, you know, sticking jQuery and, you know, JS link and stuff on them, so people are too. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
is that what you've been seeing?
Well, I mean, you could still use the library in a web part on a separate page.
And you can still turn off the new functionality.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's backtracking.
For now.
Yeah. Has anybody tested whether the document library web parts still look the same when you turn on that new look?
No, I need to try that.
I think they do, but I'm not sure. Yeah. I have to do some more testing on it.
Anybody have any opinion? Oh, SP Sherm likes the change. She said, I don't know why some people are up in arms about it. The old UI was weak sauce.
I mean, I find the OneDrive UI pretty good, personally.
Yeah, they just made it look like OneDrive, the personal OneDrive.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just more from like a business standpoint. I think people are, you know, there's a lot of investment that gets made in customizing things, and I think it's the same old with Office 365, you know.
Right.
That, you know, with one push of an update, you know, you just broke your $300,000 site, you know, so.
Yeah, in my training class, so I had just for my new, my iwmentor.com, my SharePoint training that I'm doing, I had a beginner SharePoint class, and it applied to 2013 and Office 365 because it's all mostly the same. So now do I have to go create a whole separate class for SharePoint beginners just because the document libraries look different? Maybe. Probably. So, but I don't know. It's a little awkward because they're rolling it out kind of gradually, so some people have it and some people don't.
Yeah, true.
Decisions. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming, and I love that demo. That was really cool stuff. I need to go try that. So, yeah.
Everybody's hiding my my
Do what?
psychedelic. Everybody's hiding my psychedelic party GIF. It's causing seizures.
Yes. And for those of you who requested to be in there, like when you fill in the form to join the Slack channel, it sends you back an invitation, and you have to know that you're going to get that email and click to accept the invitation, and then it will actually let you in. So, Anne, I was actually emailing back and forth with Anne because she couldn't get in, so I was able to go send her the invitation. So hopefully y'all let me know if stuff like that happens. All right. See everybody later next week.
Yep.
All right.